computers. Today's webinar is our cyber briefing webinar. The topic is what happens in the first 60 seconds of a cyber attack. So we've all heard of cyber attacks and ransomware and all this other, stuff like that. But what actually happens in the first 60 minutes? So when an attack is unleashed and successful, what comes next? So today we're gonna dissect all of that and start, kind of explain what happens. And towards the end, we'll actually give you tips on how to mitigate that risk. So with that said, let's get started. So the reality is that most businesses don't know that they've been hit for up to 3 weeks. It takes 21 days for businesses to go, something isn't right here. And by that time, the ransom note appears, the attacker has been inside your network for weeks. So everything that happens after that is cleanup, not prevention. So by the time that you realize that something is going on, they've already been there for weeks. And now 9 times out of 10, your data is already at risk. So it takes less than 1 hour for attackers to move from entry to full access. So in under an hour, they can gain access to your network and have full access to everything within your network. 21 days is the average attacker dwell time before detection. So again, it takes up to 3 weeks to realize that something isn't right. And the average cost of a breach in 2024 was $4.9 million. So extremely expensive situation to have with your business. So what we're covering today is the anatomy of a cyber attack. So this includes how they get in, move around, and prepare to strike before you know they're even there. The 60-minute attack timeline. So minute-by-minute walkthrough of exactly how fast a breach can escalate. And then how to stop it at every single stage. So the specific controls that interrupt each phase and the gaps that let attackers through. So not only are we going to explain the timeline of it, but then we will go further and say at each step, this is what you could have done to prevent that scenario. So part 1, the anatomy of a cyber attack. So every attack follows the same playbook. They don't improvise, they follow a proven sequence every time, knowing the playbook is how you stop them. So again, if you know, kind of like, say football, if you know the opponent's plays and you know what they're going to do, you know how to stop them on defense. So again, similar thing with cyber attacks. So phase 1 is the initial access. They send a phishing email that someone clicks, they get stolen credentials, maybe from the dark web, or there's an unpatched software vulnerability that they can gain access to a system that way. And then once they have initial access, they will establish a foothold. So they'll plant the malware, they'll open the back door to access, full access to the network, and then persistence is set up. And then once they've got a foothold, the lateral movement, how they move within the network. So they move across your network, mapping out systems and data. So this is kind of where they're taking an inventory of what's on your network. And then data exfiltration, they will pull out the sensitive files, credentials, and records. They're quietly copied out. So this is where, like credentials, for instance, if you're saving your credentials in a browser, it takes less than a minute. It takes less than 30 seconds to export the credentials from a browser. So that's what they're doing on all of the systems. And then the last step is execute and extort. So now they've gained access, they've established a foothold, they've moved within the entire network, they've got all the data out of the network. Now ransomware is deployed or the data is published, and now they have leverage. So now this is where they will reach out and say, we've got all of your data, we will leak it to the dark web, or we will leak it to the public unless you pay the ransom. And then part 2, so minute by minute and how fast it actually happens. So the phishing email is opened and credentials are entered. So this is where the clock starts. And then, within seconds or within a few minutes, they have the automated tools tested the credentials across 100 plus services. So in step 1, if the credentials were leaked, step 2 is they test those credentials on emails, VPNs, banking portals. Everything is pretty instantaneous. So then they know what they can have access to. Within 5 minutes of a breach, they log into your environment, whether it's through VPN, email, or cloud app. And unfortunately, since they're logging in, there's no alarm that's going to be triggered. They're not breaking in. They're not trying to force their way in. It's they're logging in. And then 15 minutes, they're scanning the network, mapping out every system and user account. So who has admin access and what data is in the network. Within 30 minutes, they're moving laterally across the network, spreading the malware and other infection across the systems and accounts. So now they're moving towards your financial data, your backups, and your domain controllers or your main server infrastructure. Within 45 minutes, they've got the data exfiltration beginning. Files are quietly copied to attacker servers. So you've got no idea it's happening. There's no alerts that went off, and business seems to be running normally. And then within the hour, ransomware is deployed or extortion message is prepared. So now that they've got leverage, unfortunately, your options are limited. And quite often, attackers will actually do this minute-by-minute scenario at the early morning hours. So they may gain access at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but they will then typically wait until after hours when they know no one's in the office. And then that's when they start this 60-minute process because there's nobody there to realize anything might be happening. And in part 3, so how to stop them at every stage. This is where a lot of businesses fail. So every phase can be interrupted, and here's how. So attackers are relying on the gaps that you already know about. So if you close them, the attacker dies at phase 1. So the initial access, if you have multi-factor authentication enabled on every system, email account, login, website login, stolen credentials become useless. And then establishing the foothold. So if you have endpoint detection and response software, think about it as like antivirus on steroids. It's behavioral monitoring software that'll detect and block the malware execution. Lateral movement, so this is where they're moving within the network. So if you've got network segmentation and least privileged access, it'll limit them to what they can access, and they won't be able to reach critical systems. Data exfiltration. So if you've got DLP and outbound traffic monitoring, this is where you'll realize that somebody's copying files or data out of the network, and you can look into what's happening. And unusual data transfers, they'll be flagged immediately, and someone that's monitoring this will be alerted. And then the execute and extort. So if you've got tested backups and a recovery plan, the ransomware no longer has leverage. You can restore your systems and be back up and running in no time. Now, unfortunately, that last part, if they've got the data, even if you restore your systems, you've got a recovery plan, they've got the data, they can still use extortion as a means to get money. Because they could say, well, you can get your business back up and running, but we've got the data and we're going to reach out to your clients and let them know we've got the data unless you pay the ransom. So that last one, it could be on the fence. A lot of times they're using extortion unless you pay. So the reality check, could an attacker make it past the first 5 minutes in your business? So if an employee's password was stolen today, could an attacker log into your systems with it? So if there's no multi-factor authentication, then yes, a stolen password would be all they would need to get in. Would your antivirus detect malware that doesn't match a known signature? Legacy antivirus misses behavioral threats, whereas endpoint detection and response does not. So if all you're running is Norton or McAfee or some other antivirus software, chances are it's not going to detect a malware deployment. If attackers got into your systems, could they reach your financial data or backups? So if you've got no network segmentation, it means that they've got unrestricted lateral access movement among all the systems and accounts in your business. If ransomware encrypted every file tonight, could you recover without paying? So again, if you've got untested backups, they're not backups. They're a false sense of security. But again, as I mentioned a little bit ago, even if you've got tested backups and you've got a recovery plan, chances are they may resort to the extortion method. So you can get the business back up and running, but unless you pay the ransom, they may still reach out to your clients and let them know they've got the data. So where does B&R Computers tie into all of this? So we offer it's a free 30-minute business risk review. We will uncover the hidden gaps in your business. And, we figure out there's a series of questions that we ask. It's about 30 minutes or less. And once we have some answers, we know where the gaps are. And if you've got a provider, you can take the summary back that we provide, take it back to them, and then they can help you remediate any of the gaps. Or if you're not working with a provider, if we uncover gaps, we can help you resolve those as well. So that's all that I've got today. It's a little shorter webinar today. I hope that you found it informative. I appreciate your time. And if you need anything, please feel free to call us, email us. We're here to help. Thank you for your time.